Welcome to this special edition of Sweet Speak. So we have a panel today, and this is the first panel we've done. Usually it's one-on-one or one-on-two conversations, but I'm excited to dive into DeepSeek. And as AI continues to evolve at an incredible pace, we're seeing more specialized tools emerge, each promising unique advantages in efficiency, accuracy, adaptability. DeepSeek, one of the latest advancements, and it's standing out with its approach to deep search and contextual understanding. Now, unlike traditional AI models, which rely heavily on pre-trained data and predictive responses, DeepSeek's designed to dive deeper, it says, into information retrieval, refining queries, generating insights with greater precision. But with these advancements come a lot of questions. How does it compare to tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude? Where does it excel? Where does it face limitations? So today we're going to explore the benefits and challenges of DeepSeek versus other AI models, from enhanced contextual awareness and real-time adaptability to concerns around computational demands and potential biases. There's a lot to unpack here. So is DeepSeek a game changer? And where does it sit with the other tools out there? So we're joined by John Torres. John's the head of operations and AI strategy at Media Genesis, a multi-award-winning web and digital marketing firm. John oversees development, creative teams, working in conjunction with designers, project managers. John ensures the most efficient skill sets are available at key points in the ongoing project. Extensive experience with complex application development, mobile apps, and a wide range of third-party web-based tools and technologies. A degree from the University of Michigan. Don't even get him started on Michigan. And a law degree from DePaul. We're also joined by Dr. Chase Cunningham. A chapter in the in my book, The Ringmaster of AI, is dedicated to Chase, known in cybersecurity industry as Dr. Zero Trust. Chase has an extensive experience in all aspects of enterprise security. And before joining his current role at GT, where he serves as the VP of Security and Market Research, he was the former Chief Strategy Officer at Ericom, previous VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester, where he tracked and covered all aspects of enterprise security, including zero trust trends, technologies, frameworks. He's got extensive experience providing support with the NSA, US Navy, FBI, Cyber, and other government mission groups, including Department of Defense and Executive Branch. We're also joined by Matt Fornito. Matt is in the book as well, is a chapter in there, is a founder and chief AI officer at the AI Advisory Group, with a background as a CDO, head of AI data scientist, spent 2 decades driving AI transformation at Fortune 500 companies. Also earning the NVIDIA's Partner of the Year award. NVIDIA's part of this discussion too, where he served as a partner chair, Trust with Billions in AI spend. So, gentlemen, that was a lot, but thank you so much for joining us here today. So I'm going to start in first, and nobody likes to be the kid with their hand up first in class. So I'm going to pick on you first, John. Let's talk about DeepSeek, and you and I have had an extensive conversation of where this sits in that pantheon of AI tools. But talk to me, how is DeepSeek reshaping the way we interact with AI-driven intelligence today?
Yeah, so thanks again for having me on here, and I love to talk about this. But I look at DeepSeek, and it's obviously one of the many different tools that comes out, and I think what made it so special here is that every news outlet decided to pick up on it all of a sudden, and that kind of sparked this interest in this type of tool that maybe a lot of people weren't used to or didn't have access to the reasoning of something that you see in '01. So this was really an open gate for a lot of people's to get a chance to actually engage with a type of tool where they could actually start to see at clear as day that transparent chain of thought thinking. And so I think what that did is just that buzz level that was already there just kind of shot out of the roof, and a lot of people started to kind of understand that, hey, I wasn't looking at this before, or maybe ChatGPT was a little hard to understand, and it kind of pulled back the veil a little bit as to what, not only what these types of tools can do, but how in fact they were doing. And I think that was a surprise to a lot of people. And not only was it freely available, and I use that term loosely, freely available. But it was also something that was pushed out onto the App Store, right? And so that became something that was readily available for people to download right away. And you saw that with the increase in downloads on the App Store itself. So that's really, I think, what pushed it forward and it really exposed it to a lot of people that maybe were not familiar with what this type of tool could do.
So Matt, then taking that, what do you think is the best use case for DeepSeek, Matt?
Well, it's a loaded question, right? When we look at this, it's kind of the aspect of LLMs, at least in their current rendition, not just DeepSeek, right? It's akin to saying we give everyone at the organization Microsoft Word, and then everyone goes, "Okay, great, we have a new tool, we have Word." And you go, "Okay, now you can write anything." You go, "Well, what do I write?" And you go, "Anything," and people are just shocked and stunned because they have no idea what the heck they're supposed to do with these tools, right? And so when we're facing this, it's like, well, what is DeepSeek providing that a ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or anything is not doing? And it's not that it's necessarily more. I mean, the current renditions, you're continuously seeing improvements, right? Performance improvements on coding tests, on accuracy across the board. And so it's not that DeepSeek was and is monumental in regards to it coming out, right? It's another large language model. The difference was the price conscientiousness of it, but what we really faced was that we're starting to hit an optimization phase within large language models. So kind of like when you went from the horse and buggy to the Model T, and then we started seeing greater optimizations for cars with gas optimization. But then it's flipped on its head with like the electric car, right? And so right now we're in this phase of, okay, we had machine learning and basic models, we had natural language processing, now we have large language models, and now we're at a point where we're trying to optimize those. And so what DeepSeek did was found out you don't have to go 32 decimal point places for accuracy. You can do 8, which dramatically reduces the memory load. You see that they're doing compression on their models, that they're doing, we'll say, more localized lookups or search to find the insights that you need with their reasoning much faster, right? And so the computation was better there. But we're at this optimization phase. We're going to see this transition or change every week, every month for the next 12, 24 months until there's the electric car of LLMs, right? Which maybe will be more of the agentic responses. Maybe it'll be a multimodal model that includes deep learning. There's a lot of ways this can ultimately go. But in regards to why DeepSeek's so popular, it was essentially because of the cost optimization compared to what other models took to build. But I will also add one caveat in that Anthropic CEO said their Sonnet model was done the exact same way at about the exact same cost 10 months ago. So it's not like they're so innovative, but it's how they actually created their reasoning to produce the results they have.
Yeah, it's a great point. And by the way, I encourage you, viewers out there, put your questions in the chat. We'll hit those if we have time. Chase, you had a great meme that basically showed DeepSeek getting their data out of ChatGPT. I thought it was fantastic. Would you agree that DeepSeek's achievements was not really the result of any groundbreaking new methods, but rather efficient application of established techniques like mixture of experts, or architectures, or low precision computation in KV optimization? These methods owe much of their foundation to decades of investment by research like OpenAI, Google, NVIDIA. Do you feel that way? And do you feel it's a little cheap what they're doing?
I mean, I think that none of this happens in a vacuum, and the CCP is very involved in. I mean, if you cut a hot fart in China, they own it, right? I mean, it's not like there's any question about that. So the issue that stands out to me here is the timing of this is very suspicious, with the election in place, with people coming into power that are not necessarily friendly to the Chinese government. The fact that this is also coming along the same lines when NVIDIA just basically came out and said, here's our giant valuation, manipulation of the stock market, those types of things. I defer to John and Matt on the expertise around how the models are doing the cool things that they're doing, because I could pontificate on that, but they're probably way more adept at that than I am. My concern here that I see is that this is, everybody said it's a Sputnik moment. I mean, the thing that stood out for me about Sputnik moment was, oh crap, the Russians are in space and we're not. That's the issue that we have. But here, It's, oh crap, the Russians are in space, and somehow they miraculously got the same designs for the stuff from our space program. You know, that's what ekes to me of the actual problem here. And I think it also speaks to the fact that the CCP is playing 3D chess and the US is sitting over here licking the checkerboard.
Yeah, and Matt, I'll take, go to you after that, because we always have to be aware of that free product trap, right? China's essentially created a super vacuum for collecting data, that's so-called a cheaper LLM. Remember how social media was free, but we became the product. Talk to me, building off of what Chase said around that cheaper model.
Well, yeah, I think Chase is dead on in the fact that talking about this doesn't happen in a vacuum. So on one hand, we have this community of people building towards AI and looking to build towards AGI. And the community holistically across the world, like, relatively wants the same things, right? There's profiteering obviously in that, but relatively wants the same things. But then there's the access aspect of like governmental access and control, right? And so just, hopefully viewers know by now, but like, there's backdoors into our cell phones and into our emails and everything else you can think of, right? All of our data is collected. With LLMs, we're kind of in the Wild West, just like the internet was 25 years ago. And in one hand, that's fantastic and fun because we get to be in this playground and get to experience like what growth looks like. But then you're going to see a transition in regards to how do we maximize profits from this? How do we manipulate human behavior? Which, you can think of how Facebook was when it first came out in, was that 07-ish? That it was very open access in regards to the news feed. And then it started being hyper curated to spread animosity or fear or anything that causes visceral emotions, because that drives engagement. And so right now we're in this LLM Wild West, which is a lot of fun. And so what we have is a battle between governments and access to control to humans' data and behavior, because they can drive that in the future.
John, let's talk about scaling beyond the hype too, because training a model is just one step, right? What does it take to successfully operationalize and scale an LLM for widespread use? And where do you think DeepSeek stands in that process?
I mean, when you're talking about scaling, again, if you're going to use it organizationally, obviously all of these security things come into play, right? I mean, I would immediately tell somebody that you're not going to be taking DeepSeek and just letting your company use it and just say, hey, guess what, guys? We got a brand new toy. Just go to this website, type it in, and you're good to go, because there's so many issues with that. There's so many issues even with things that we know are controlled within the United States. Again, that's something that you wouldn't tell someone to just go in and take some of your data, throw it in there, we'll mix it up, and we're going to get something great. All of these things can obviously be mitigated in terms, and this I think where DeepSeek comes in and says, hey, we can take some of this technology and we can distill it down so that you can then, and it's open source, and again, I'll use that as air quotes, but there's the idea that you can start to take something that we once thought were going to be billions and billions of dollars and require so much infrastructure to do, and say, you can get good enough or good enough to get further than where you are with something that is scalable and usable, whether it's a locally run instance of this type of tool, or even utilizing something that we understand. So if you're using like a cloud provider, whether it's AWS or use of Google or Grok or one of these ones that we know is controlled, and even like Perplexity has got into it, right? Where they say, hey, we've taken what DeepSeek has done, but if you pay us $20 a month, you can guarantee that this is staying within the US in terms of where it's getting that information. It's less censored. So there are safer ways to do that. But if we're talking about how we utilize this, and if we're not using an off-the-shelf company that's using the back end of the API to touch some of these tools, and we want to just say, hey, we want our engineers or our team or business people to start using this, then there are definitely safer ways to do that in order to ensure that you're somewhat safeguarding the data that you are providing to it. And I think that's such a big thing that's overlooked, I think, a lot of times, where people just kind of want to automatically just jump into the newest tool because it's going to make your life easier for sure. But there's a lot of precautions that we jump right past that. I think there was a article today or the other day where, this was an issue in the Pentagon starting back in December, where two of their people had already started, they had noticed that they had been using DeepSeek already. And it's like, oh, we probably should shut that down. So if people in the Pentagon are using it, I mean, that just goes to show you that this is something that gets excitement, gets people wanting to use it, but we have to also be very cautious and careful with how we're going about it, and say having those safeguards and being clear about what those safeguards are and why they're needed, I think is super important.
Yeah, I want to ping that over to Chase too, because I saw you nodding on that one, because that is a concern, isn't it?
I mean, it's beyond concern. I've been on calls all week with people up on Capitol Hill and in the executive branch, kind of talking about this thing through different organizations and working groups, and it's extremely troubling where this is showing up. I don't know how that actually got put in play, where some of the stuff was even able to be downloaded and put in place. And of course, the current argument is, oh, well, we're running it locally. Oh, okay, well, no one in history has ever backdoored an application, right? Like that doesn't happen. Oh, and we got it from an open source thing that China happened to push over. Oh, well, let's put that in the Pentagon. That's a great idea for it. I think that this is a master stroke by the organizational structure within the CCP to get a foothold into some of the most valuable stuff in the United States. And unfortunately for us, people do what people do. And when we see quicker, better, cheaper, we go, sweet, and we go grab it and start using it. No one goes, wait a minute, is this a good idea? It happened with TikTok, which is a Chinese influence engine, just is. And then now it's with this thing. So it is extraordinarily troubling to me the way this thing is playing out. And somebody there also mentioned the whole hedge fund thing and whatever else. I've been doing a bunch of research on the founding team at DeepSeek. The ties get very interesting with where they came from and what they did and where they went to university and those types within the government, the CCP, and the Politburo over there as well. And to your point there, the question that Nick had about it, I don't see how you could not think that there was some stock market manipulation potentially going on here. And it's not, none of this is inflammatory. It's literally, if you look at the data, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. They colored with crayons. That's the great thing about the CCP, is they don't really hide very well. They're bold enough to go, we did it, sucks for you. I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, Matt?
Yeah, I was thinking about from the enterprise side, right? And we certainly had this aspect of shadow IT, and now we're experiencing shadow AI, and we're not going to put AI back. It's Pandora's box, right? It's here, and once LLMs were released to the masses, it's going to stay here and going to perpetuate and grow. And so, on one hand, the organizations or organizational leadership that thinks that they can get by without AI when it's going to be a competitive mode and a necessity, essentially, since everyone else will do it, is wrong. And if you don't do it, the bigger issue becomes people will download whatever the heck they want to download, and then they're going to feed your company's data into those applications. And all of the terms and conditions, not just DeepSeek's, but all the terms and conditions of pretty much every single one of them says that they can use any data inputs and outputs to retrain their models. And so I believe Samsung was caught up in that like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And so if you don't adhere to understanding technology and AI enough, like, you're going to get left behind. And if you refuse to leverage it, then you're going to have employees that destroy your intellectual property, which means any competitive moat that you did have is now gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to Chase's point also about stock market manipulation, and John, I'll throw it to you. Nick wrote this question in there as far as, it was developed by a hedge fund that had the best GPUs. The $5 million in training is a fake number, right? Obviously, everything's clickbaity these days, my word. And, talk to me about that. Is it an apples and an orange thing between these LLMs?
I mean, define that. What do you mean apples and orange things? Like, is there that different between, a ChatGPT versus a DeepSeek versus a Claude versus Minstrel or any of these other ones?
Yeah. So, financial analysts have drawn the direct comparisons between DeepSeek's budget, let's say,
Sure.
and those of OpenAI, Google, DeepMind, Anthropic. Yeah. Why is this an oversimplification? And what key cost differences do you think are being overlooked?
I mean, again, and I think Matt had mentioned this too. I mean, I think there's a lot of fudging in these numbers in terms of what they're willing to say, and again, good reasons for someone to say, "Hey, by the way, we did this with under $6 million." Ta-da! It instantly tanks the stock because it's like, oh my God, are we investing too much money into all of these services and infrastructure? We don't really need it. Look what this ragtag little team out of China was able to do. I think that there's some underlying motivations for those things. And I think, we all are pretty much aware of that. But the understanding of if you just stop and think about it and say, could this actually have been done for 6 million? Or are we talking about how much did it take to make the final training? Did we talk about how much does it cost for the actual infrastructure, the engineering, for however it was trained beforehand? I think there's a lot of money that's not being discussed here, and there's a reason to not show the full hand here as well. In terms of not only for what it took to actually develop this, I think it's probably more along the lines of what Anthropic had said. Hey, we did something similar to this a while ago, and this was about as much money as we spent as well. So it's not something that's brand new, but it gets picked up so easily because we're in this type of era where all of a sudden it makes it seem like it's a race, right? It's that Sputnik moment where it's like, oh, this is exciting. We want to rah behind we got to do this because look what they're doing. We got to get there. And it's like, wait a minute. Let's pause a little bit and think about the reasonings for these things and understand where it's coming from, because I think there's a lot to understand there, especially if we go beyond just what the money or the monetary costs or what they're pushing, but even the infrastructure and how the LLM itself is run, right? They're like, hey, this is brand new, how we're distilling it. And then you start looking behind the veil and say, some of this seems awfully familiar. And even some of these, like the thinking things where it starts to pull up stuff that is thought about the same way that OpenAI's O1 model is thinking about. So again, I think this was said was like, sometimes you're coloring with crayons. They don't really care that, hey, we might have taken this directly from OpenAI without asking them and took it and put it into our model. And I think the point is true. They don't care because people are not going to care in general. They're going to be like, that's fine. We're going to use it and it's free. And you're going to charge me $20 a month or $200 a month. Why bother? I'm going to go this way. So they're not really trying to hide it. They have other motivations, I think.
And John, there was a private equity group reached out, right? Because I often do AI subject matter expertise interviews, and they said, "Hey, we want to know how China illegally gets GPUs." And I was like, "If I knew that, do you think I would in any way ever tell you that? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of in my life." But I mean, I think to your point with market manipulation, there's one aspect where NVIDIA is overinflated, right? Conceptually, we'll say temporally, right? We are not at an inflection point where everyone knows and can understand GPU or the underlying necessitation for GPUs, right? Because most organizations are still so far behind doing machine learning that deep learning or building your own LLM is a pipe dream, right? And so you don't necessarily need that compute today. But the thing also is that if Pareto's principle applies, which it tends to, that 80 to 90% of GPUs are going to the top 10 to 20% of companies, then people are going to continue using LLMs in our day-to-day lives. And so it's not like GPUs are going to go away. Then we might do more efficient or more inference-oriented or more edge-oriented compute. But at the end of the day, we're just getting greater market expansion because it's not a cannibalization of market share right now. It's that not enough people know how to leverage this or use this effectively. And so I think on one hand, the market's going to certainly readjust. But the other piece too is from the technical aspect. We're at a point where, okay, we've already dissected what DeepSeek did to build these optimized models. Guess what Anthropic and OpenAI and everyone else is going to do? They're going to do the same damn thing. And then once that's done, they don't really have that competitive moat anymore. So then it's what was the point or purpose in regards to defining that? And so they went with hyper cost optimization, that we can do this a lot cheaper, right? But in the end of the day, most people aren't going to build their own LLM. So it's really essentially a showcasing of technological aptitude that China was ahead of us.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, Chase, from a cybersecurity standpoint, obviously a user like myself, right? It's free. I'm going to dive in and look. But is this a play for the haves and have-nots as well, right? Those larger organizations are going to be a little bit, from a cybersecurity standpoint, hopefully a little bit more aware, a little more, having trepidation as far as using this, where those smaller organizations are like, guys, let's dive in. It's fine. Do you see from a cybersecurity standpoint that being a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's one of those things again where this came on so fast that they didn't even have time to knee-jerk react to it and go, "Oh my God, let's start blocking domains and keep people from downloading this, whatever else." Like it was inside of enterprise networks pretty much the day somebody put a news posting out about it, and it's there and it's going to continue to, worm its way through those systems. As far as creating the gap, I mean, I do think that we're starting to see that there's an increased cost with all this stuff. It's going to continue to go, further on that role, and it's going to create additional cybersecurity concerns. And unfortunately, this is a conversation around DLP, which everybody hates, and it's going to wind up making it where we have to have, that sort of, oh well, we start putting DLP rules in place again, which data has still been the most unsolved problem in all of cyber, for all the zero trust talk and whatever else. And now we're talking about solving for data security at an infinite scale, at infinite speed, at infinite capacity, with superpowers playing against each other. I mean, it don't look good for the home team.
There's no way to put the toothpaste back in the tube, is there, Chase?
I don't even worry about the toothpaste back in the tube. I just worry about now we're dealing with the fact that we're squirting toothpaste out of a factory full of tubes. I mean, and we're doing that at just a massive scale of this thing. And it's not just proprietary data or whatever. I mean, we're talking about people are plugging this into hospitals, they're plugging it into banks, they're plugging it into, if there's a place where someone goes, I have a question, they're trying this out. And where don't you have a question nowadays? So it's, it was gas on a fire before. Now it's like napalm on gas on a fire that was, burning even hotter.
John, you've got a lot of clients out there for your organization that are looking for solutions, for tools. Are they already clamoring, going, "Hey, what should we test this out? Should we try this?" What are you telling them today?
Yeah, I mean, I think from where I'm coming from, a lot of my clients that I deal with, whether it's retail or have some hospitality places, but I mean, in general, the general question is, what is all of this stuff and why aren't we using it, or how do we use it better? They want to go, right? Everything is go, go, go. It's this fear of we're going to miss out unless you tell us what we need to be doing and how to do it. And look what I found. My kid sent me this link about DeepSeek, and how do I use this in my business and put it in? And it's like, whoa, let's slow it down, because the conversation has been happening for a while, and we've been trying to gently bring them along to it, right, in a way that makes a lot of sense. And we always tell them, like, you need to think about what the reason for doing anything is going to be from the start. Like, what are you trying to achieve? Because there are so many opportunities and tools out there, even AI tools, right, that could accomplish what they want to do without you just burning the whole place down for the sake of not being left out. And I think a lot of times you will run into people that just kind of want to do this because they feel like this is the thing that I need to do, without understanding how or why or when to plug this in. And so we have to kind of walk them back a little bit to understand the strategy and understand the endpoint, and then say, look, instead of doing it this way, here's a way to do it. And this is the reasons for doing it this way, right? These tools are tested and tried and true. You're already using Salesforce, so let's go ahead and use Salesforce in this method. Hey, it has AI stuff in it that's tested and true, or you're using, so some of these are a little bit more kind of learning or teaching moments for them to say, look, what's the great about these advancements in AI technology and what have you, is that it's just making your workflows smarter. And in order for them to get smarter, you have to first understand what that workflow is, right? You just can't just open the hose and then hope all of a sudden you've got yourself a pool that's filled up nice and easy. So it's just kind of, I find myself a lot of those conversations just saying, hey, before we just start talking about random things that you saw on CNN, let's first understand where you're at, where you're hoping to achieve, and then let's talk about some of the tools that might best match or get you to that destination, not only more efficiently, but also with a nod towards, safety and understanding proprietary information and making sure that it goes in the right place.
Yeah, Matt, you're advising AI group organizations about AI, rather, through your AI advisory group. When we had the conversation about AI about a year ago, everybody wants in, everybody, budget's wide open. Now, budgets are tighter, obviously, in the economic times we're in. When this free tool comes along, are people asking you, should we be using this? How can we use DeepSeek?
Well, yeah. So I think there's two things. One, the reality was the markets in 2024 were much more suppressed. At almost every CEO of a consulting firm that I talked to said 2024 was their worst year ever. Every sales leader I talked to said most of their people didn't hit their numbers, right? And so the investments around AI, which is a transformation as opposed to running status quo, you're asking people to uplift to learn new things. Like there's energy and time and investments that go into that. And so in 2024, that wasn't really the case. 2025, I'm seeing a much larger trend based on my calendar being fully booked in regards to people really wanting to learn and leverage. But, we take this from the approach of everyone always goes like technology first, right? We have for 2 decades and or technically longer. And the reality is, to John's point, is you have to start with why. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Because it's not about just having a large language model. Like, cool, you have that. That doesn't matter because it's not impactful. It's another tool in the tool belt, just like a machine learning model is. What really matters is understanding what your organizational vision is, what the strategy is to get there, figuring out what KPIs and metrics you need to track to improve behavior, and then figuring out like, well, what are the workflows and processes that eat up our time? What's the technology stack we need? What are the people we need? What backend models do we need? And so like when we look internal, we automate 80% of our company. A lot of that is like APIs and integrations between tools, right? It's not even large language models. And maybe there's machine learning somewhere in there. In some places, we have large language models to handle some of those tasks. And it saves me 50, 60 hours per week, right? And we purport to, like, even though we don't do all of the integrations ourselves for clients, like 10 hours back for every employee, like that should be your goal, because that's not just the 25% ROI based on time back, but exponential in regards to the ability for them to do things that actually matter because you've automated out all the mundane BS. And so the cognition needs to be a flip on, well, which tools should we have? And more so, well, what are you trying to solve? And how do we empower our employees to be able to solve things for themselves? And how do we use these large language models on the back end to automate our workflows so we can do meaningful work?
Chase, would you recommend this today? Obviously, we heard your concerns as a cybersecurity leader. Where do you point people who are saying, I need a large language model? And if they come to you going, where should I start?
I mean, I would point them towards what we currently have that's available as far as ChatGPT and those types of things. And I would be running it inside of a protected environment where I've got solid controls around it and those types of things. And if somebody came and said, we want to use DeepSeek, I would say, there's the door, please pack your crap and get out, because you're a risk to us and I can't have you doing what you're doing here. There are ways to research and try this stuff, but it's not the way that it's being done right now. And to Matt and John's point, I love that they're talking strategy, but we all know that strategy is like the rented mule of the space here, where they'll get to it when they get to it, and then maybe we'll just whip it more. Will it eventually catch up? It's never like, let's figure out how to use this correctly. Let's put controls in place. Let's safeguard our data. Like, let's do all those things that we signed that piece of paper that said we're compliant. That's not how this goes. So this just skews us farther to the right. And the introduction of risk here is so exponential that I think that that's what's being lost on people. If anyone comes and emails me or DMs me again about risk calculations, I'm just going to start laughing and send them back like screenshots of DeepSeek. Because I mean, that's where we're at. Like your risk calculation has been categorically eviscerated. And this is where we, continue to go and grow from. And you can try stuff out. Like if you're an individual, by all means, please go bonkers. Like it's the great thing about a free country. You can be as dumb as you want to be. But if you're corporate and it's my business and I have requirements and laws and legalities and protected information, all those things, there's a whole different ball of wax to unravel here.
Yeah, and to follow that up, Chase, because a year ago when we were talking, or even longer, I was leading global CISO events, and we talked, it was the Wild West of AI. But we were like, it's going to, there's going to be tightening of that. I feel like we're in the opposite right now, and it continues to be a bit more Wild West. What regulations do you think should be in place to protect not only our companies but ourselves?
Well, I mean, I really think the folks on Capitol Hill should look at the executive order that I drafted for them and sent up and posted and has been looked at 50,000 plus times so far just on LinkedIn, that literally outlines what an intelligent strategy for cyber national security looks like. I think they should stop firing people that are in place that could do things to put us in a better position. And I'm not a political animal. I could care less. I think a two-party system's like trying to pick a dog turd up from the clean end. No matter what, you get shit on your hands. But where we're at is with this is just going to continue to go further sideways. Like there is, to your point on the Wild West, like if you remember that old Van Damme movie Time Cop, like this is where they went back to the Wild Wild West and gave everybody MP5s and just kind of said, let's see what happens. And we're all sitting here watching it play out.
Yeah. Final question, and I want this to go to each one of you because I think you have in your different areas have a different take on this. What do you think? Start with you, John. What do you think's the key lesson the AI industry should take from this moment we're in right now?
Sure. I mean, I think it's been a great awakening moment, I think, for people to kind of get this exposure to what these type of systems can do. But I think it's also, it's been great. It's also come out is all of this concern, right? This worry about where is our data going? And you didn't see a ton of that when we started to talk about OpenAI or Gemini. It's because those are US based kind of companies. But this idea of, hey, we're going somewhere really, really fast. It's happening really, really quickly. And I want to be jumping on it. I think it's given everyone a chance to really kind of see that in person themselves and to hear more about it. So I think that exposure is important, one, because it then allows them to understand where we are and how quickly we're changing and evolving. But it also gives them the opportunity to see that with all of these great advancements, as not as sexy as it is to talk about security and protocol and strategy, that is like a paramount point of all of this in order to kind of say, hey, we can get somewhere, but we need to get there with thought, right? With an idea, with strategy. And so I think that is, Chase was saying, it's something that's deeply missing right now. We have a lot of thought leaders out there. We have a lot of great ideas and guidelines. I'm not saying that we need to regulate everything to be the detriment of us advancing, but at least this opens up a conversation to say, hey, there really is a chance for us to excel or get somewhere really far, whether in our organization or business or as a country or whatever. But we should do that with the sense of understanding and guidance. And we have a lot of smart people that can help start to do that.
Matt, go to you next. Key lessons for the AI industry at this moment.
Yeah, I think, innovation and risk are antithetical to one another, right? And so we're at a point where it's who will watch the watchers, because if these LLMs don't have the needs or means or wherewithal, desire to self-regulate, then they'll be able to do whatever the heck they want, right? So any of those companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepSeek, and so on one hand, yes, it's great to innovate, right? I completely care about transformation and innovation. It's what impassions me. But we have to do this with some semblance of awareness of risk, right? Because LLMs will not get to the infrastructure of a transformer will not get to a Terminator, right? We're not going to get to AGI with LLMs. But it is proving that with how the world is operating and how everyone is just jumping on the bandwagon without concern, that as we figure out ways to get closer to AGI, it means that if we don't have any regulation, if we don't have any monitoring, if we don't have any ways of handling this, then we're going to experience, we'll say mass issues, right? And we're already experiencing that when we look at LLMs today as agents. There's a lot of BS with the word agents today, so I do want to caveat that. But as real agents are actually built, and can either handle a single task or can interact with other agents, we are going to see a large number of jobs either transformed or eradicated. I have deep concerns for anyone with 1 to 5, maybe 10 years of experience in the job market, because when you're a programmer, when you're a lawyer, whatever the heck you are, that's when you learn. That's when you fail. That's when you grow. And if these large language models can handle that type of workload for the 1 to 10 years of experience, then how is an individual going to become a subject matter expert in that field? And so there's also this piece. So there's innovation we have to have. There's risk that mitigation that we have to have. But there's also, how are we going to enable and support humanity and society as AI is going to dramatically change our markets?
Yeah. Chase, key lesson that we can take?
Well, I mean, key lesson. Alexander Taylor said something about how can this be closed ecosystem, whatever else. For the record, all software is inherently compromised. Like that's literally the zero trust mantra, right? But in this particular case, it's an enemy nation state that's coming up and saying, "Here's some free stuff," and people are going, "Cool, I'll just use this," and you can lock it down and your closed ecosystem, whatever you got. Sooner or later, the chickens are coming home to roost. So that's just what's the reality of what's going on here. I think from the perspective of security and compliance rules, if you're in a company that's doing business in the United States, you should be held to a standard that it's going to make this difficult to leverage right off the bat. Like, it should be something you can work with and innovate with and research and whatever, but it shouldn't be done the way that it's done now. And I just, again, like, you have to John and Matt's point, step back from a second and look at like this whole thing in totality and understand that we are in a competition with other nations on planet Earth to be the superpower. And there are ways that are being worked in this particular instance as well to begin to change the game. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Is it hardcore Machiavellian? I don't want to say that yet. But is it a master stroke if it's even sort of along those lines? Yeah. So be aware, be smart, don't trust it, do the things that you should do to be safe and secure as best as you possibly can.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, this has been a fantastic discussion and dive into this. Honestly, I have a feeling like in about 3 months, we're going to be talking about a different tool that's come out that is even cheaper and better and has just as many or more challenges as well.
It'll come out of China too.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this. Those who are watching, still jump into that chat. This will be up for a while, so please jump into the chat. Let's continue this conversation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.